All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Archived Conversations, a podcast about contemporary art and politics. Today, we have a very special guest, Alana.
Hi.
Wel- Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for being with us today. I'm so excited to talk with you. Please go ahead and give us some info about yourself.
So my name's Alana. I've been a chef for about like 6 years now, kind of since I like sprung into adulthood. I'm an Afro-Latina, queer person, and going into the food industry, which is like very cis het white, it teaches you some things about how political food is.
Oh yeah. Even when I was doing research for this conversation, I Googled like famous chef and like yeah, just a sea of white men. I think I got to like the 10th like row. Uh and I saw one lady, but she was white. And then kept scrolling. Finally, I saw like one like man who looked Asian, and I'm like, okay, but I've never. This is all. This is the top responses, huh? Like,
Yep, that's
uh,
all they give you.
yeah. So, uh, definitely, definitely. And you said you started cooking about 6 years ago. Um, how did you kind of get started? Was it out of necessity? Because you kind of mentioned like springing into adulthood. Uh,
It was ultimately. I've always been like the cook of the family. My close to both of my grandmas, and they've taught me how to cook culturally like significant food, and I'm half Dominican, half Colombian, so
mhm.
just a lot of cooking. That's like how you show love. And
Yes.
then I mean, yeah, I turned 18 and I was tired of poverty and I needed to make money fast in 4 years of college. I went to 1 week of community college and had a panic attack and quit and went to culinary school instead. And culinary school was only a couple of months, and it kind of fast tracked me on like a career.
Yeah.
And I realized I could make money and also do something like fairly interesting. So it felt worth it at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, not awesome that you had a panic attack, but the fact that you took that and were like, okay, it's time to like switch gears and not do this thing that's causing me to literally like not be able to function, quite literally.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
um,
no.
I definitely feel that. I was so ready to be done with school. I stuck it out, but I was like struggling through it the whole time. And I kind of had a moment too where I was trying to study other things and then nothing was working. It was hard for me to
Hmm.
focus. And then finally it was like, I'm gonna just do art. And it was still hard, but I was like, I'm gonna just do it. This is the thing that I love to do and I'm passionate about. So I
Yeah, and like
definitely get
at
that.
17, 18, being like, oh, hey, pick a specific topic to then study for the next 4 years and like make sure you're an expert on it by the end of that time was so much pressure. Like, I was like, I just finished high school and I feel emotionally drained. Can I have a moment, please? Um,
Yeah.
and so I think it was like definitely a turn of events that I didn't think it would take, but no, cooking has had its ups and downs for sure. But yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess one of the things I'll ask you first is what are some of your like favorite dishes to make?
Ooh, okay. Definitely anything plantain based is kind of all I care about. Um, Mangu is like it's like a traditional Dominican dish. It's mashed plantains and then like Dominican salami, a fried egg, fried cheese, and then pickled onions. And like it's just traditional breakfast food. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to eat. And then on the Colombian side of things, I'd probably say my grandma teaches me, they're basically like fried cheese balls, buñuelos,
Hmm.
and my grandma teaches me to make them every single Christmas as if she hasn't taught me how to make them every year. So it's just very, very special to me. I just let her go
Oh,
off and like go off on a tangent about how she's teaching me this, and it's really, really sweet.
yeah, I love that so much. I think that there can be such an incredible bond built between people when you prep food together, like even just like chopping vegetables together, or cooking together, and also just sharing the meal together. It's like you work together to create something amazing and delicious, and then you have the reward afterwards, and then you can have a conversation
Exactly.
over the meal.
Exactly. And like food is so much about like to me community building and I don't know. I mean, because it's about culture. It's about like your roots and where you come from, and you learn things about people when you cook for them or when they cook for you. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things that everyone has to do. Like
Yeah,
everyone's got to eat to survive, so it's like that's one of the biggest things that everyone and like all of humanity has in common, and that's like incredible.
exactly. And that's also, I think, so much of what makes it political is because it is one of our most basic needs. You know, we need nourishment, we need food to function. It becomes a thing when we've got food insecurity and when we've got, I mean, all of the issues we have surrounding the housing crisis and all of those things that goes back to food. You can't expect people to like lift themselves up by their bootstraps if they're not fed, if they're not nourished, if they can't function, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it going back to our good old friend capitalism, it's like we're, even in school, we're taught to just be productive, to like work, just keep working towards whatever like end goal there is. Usually it's for someone else's goal that you're working towards.
Hmm.
And this has definitely created a culture. I'm sure you've also seen the memes of people like not eating enough, and not in the sense of because they don't want to eat or there's something else going on in there. It's because they're so busy that they like forget to eat. And there's the memes of like me wondering why I uh, am tired at 12 p.m. when all I've had is an iced coffee and like my vape or something like that.
Yes, yeah, an iced
And
coffee and
that's
like a
become
single
such
chicken
a
tender.
common, yeah, it's become such a common thing, where people just like don't even eat breakfast. You just mentioned one of your favorite dishes is like a breakfast dish, and
Yeah.
most Americans, I'm sure there's a statistic on how many Americans eat breakfast, and I can guarantee you it's probably not most.
No, no,
Um,
and it's yeah, I mean to take the time, but because again, capitalism, we're not given the time to take that time to make a meal for ourselves. I mean, I think that's like such a big part of self-care and like I mean just survival. You need to take 5 minutes to make yourself a meal. I will feel so stressed, and if I take like 20 minutes to just do that one little thing for myself, I instantly feel better for the rest of the day. But it's about like taking that and not feeling the pressure of like every other single thing that you have on your mind and on your plate. But it's really, really hard to do in like the system that we've set up.
it is. I constantly am having this kind of, I guess, conversation like with my partner about like I don't understand how people like most people can work like a full-time job and like somehow work out like often, and then they're eating and meal prepping, and I'm like I can barely even like juggle the part-time job I have with like making sure I have food to bring to that part-time job the next day.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's like so you have, 8 hours at your job, 4 hours to yourself when you get home. And with those 4 hours, you've got to make yourself a meal to eat that night, shower, brush your teeth, take care of yourself. If you want to relax, that's out the window because then you also have to prep for the next day. And it's just like this vicious cycle that we all fall into. And it makes it impossible to like, one, I think, enjoy food.
Yes.
And
Yes.
two, to even get it into us, like that we're eating nutritious foods and that I mean, it brings out like binge eating in a lot of us.
Yes.
Awful statistic, but Latinos, specifically like Latino men, have the highest binge eating rates, but they also make up the majority of the service industry. So we work them to the bone, and we
And then
don't
they,
feed them the way that they need to
yeah.
be fed. So they're starving all day, and then they're eating giant plates of food. And it's
Yeah.
created like an entire culture of that for specifically like I would say in my community. Yeah, I mean, we're not taught to eat small plates of food because you're not sure when your next meal is coming or you're going to go work a 12-hour shift. So eat up now and, you'll replenish at some point later, 12 hours from now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is why too that maybe for some people at least, when holidays come around, it really does become a special thing of making a very special meal, a big special meal, and then sharing it with all of your friends and family for the
Hmm.
day. You don't get that a lot, and even me growing up, my parents, we always ate at the dinner table together. We always sat together for a
Yeah.
meal. But I remember so many of my friends, like, and I'm talking like elementary and middle school even, um, would be even just surprised that my family was together for a meal at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my family went through like we went through like a collective traumatic event, and like we went from a family that like ate dinner every night together to like two separate homes, and then my mom was struggling with medical issues and all of these things come into play, and like that aspect of things is gone. But it again just goes back to like again the system, capitalism does not it's not about community building. It's not about
No,
keeping us together. It's the
no.
exact opposite. It's tearing us apart in so many ways. And I think food is just like a really small little example of a much, much bigger issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, capitalism tears us apart because that's the whole goal of like we want you to be by yourself in your own apartment that you're paying for, the one bedroom
Hmm.
one bed apartment that's too expensive. We want you to have your own car, not really investing in public transportation because oil companies are
Hmm.
always lobbying against that. So it's like all these little things are being built around us to keep us away from each other so that we're not actively near each other all the time, where we're talking about all of these issues and demanding. Because, again, it's like how many of us, I guess, like normal, average, everyday people are there, and then how many people are in power.
Hmm. Exactly.
They don't want
I
us to, they don't want us to think about that.
No, I there was a really interesting, I think it was probably a TikTok. That's unfortunately where I get a nice chunk of
That's
information.
okay. I learn a lot from TikTok, so
Yeah,
I
I
love
mean,
it.
it's a good starting point for learning a lot of things, and then you can like get deeper into it.
Yes.
But it was talking about how hard like community building as like a concerned citizen and like a concerned like community member activist, like how hard it is to build systems to help like your fellow person, your neighbor, because we're just so disconnected. And I think that's where like tools like TikTok and stuff hopefully come in and build us back up. But I think
Hmm.
that's kind of my goal with food and where I see myself is like hopefully building community through food to help others. Like isn't that the end goal for like most people who do art is to bring people together, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Or call attention to something.
Yes, yeah, put eyes on it. I mean, because
Hmm.
again, like you said, we're not all together being able to like call everybody out, hey, look at this thing, because we're all on our own path, alone, isolated. that,
Mhm.
hopefully we can call attention, make change, do what we need to do for like a better future. Because right now it's
Yes.
very bleak.
Yeah. Yes. It is. I will say definitely, through having a few of these different conversations now, and like anytime that I am in a space that is like blatantly community oriented, like an event that is blatantly centered around that, I always get
Mhm.
a little glimmer of like hope in my heart, just because it's like the world is shit, but at least the people who are like here immediately in front of me are like good people who are trying to do good shit and in this shit world. I'm
No, I
like, at
know.
least at least there's that, you know?
No, I know. It's like a nice little sliver. You're like, okay, there are good people. There are cool people that are seeing it the same way. Yeah, slowly but
Exactly.
surely, I think.
Yeah. So I guess I also would like to ask, like what, and this can be expanded upon, um, but what and okay, so the reason I also thought of this question, just to preface, the gallery that I work with, we recently had a show that was focused around food justice and food sovereignty, and there was like a panel, and there was a couple people. There was one guy who is the Feeding Tampa Bay like guy. I don't know if he was the CEO. I don't remember exactly like what his title was, but like he was there talking. There was somebody who at the school I work at, they have food banks, and or what is it?
Oh, like
Uh,
community pantries kind of
a
thing. Yeah.
pantry. That's the word I was looking for. Like the coordinator of the food pantry was there and everything, and overall it was a good conversation. I think I just became a little frustrated at one point because one of the people who was on the panel continued to say like we like need to do more work towards achieving, food justice and
Hmm.
everything in this way. And it was somebody who, and I do agree with that, but I guess where the problem, where I was getting frustrated was I just kept thinking about how much more could be done if not just us were thinking about it.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
like what if Ron DeSantis tomorrow, you know what I'm saying, was like, we're gonna end hunger in Florida right now by I don't know, raising the taxes by like 0.5% or something, and or I'm gonna donate a portion of my wealth to do this. You know what I'm saying? But that doesn't happen. Like that's not really something that is largely talked about, or like put pressure onto, and I guess it's just because there's a million other things that are at stake. So it's hard to it's hard to pick one thing to focus on. But I guess out of this, I wanted to ask you, someone who is like in this industry,
Hmm.
and is passionate about it. Um, what does food justice and like food sovereignty mean to you?
Ugh, well, let's start. We'll go back to my fine dining days because that's what I did for the first couple of years of my career. That
All
was
right,
very
let's
much
do
where
it.
like because that's that's where the money was. It was like if I wanted to make money, it was fine dining. And I mean, it's interesting. I have a love for like the crazy science that goes into molecular gastronomy, all that stuff. But then you sit
Yeah.
there and you realize the people that you're feeding and
Mhm.
that's where it gets starts to get to me. I remember going ahead and we worked 16-hour shifts. I was working, there was a point I had a paycheck. I worked 78 hours. I
Man,
don't
yeah.
know why that was even a thing that I was doing, but that's what was going on. And so um, we went ahead and prepared like plates for 500 people. And these are like incredibly rich, old money down in
Yeah.
Palm Beach, Florida. Like that
Yep.
was the
Ugh,
energy of it.
it
And
hurts.
every single plate comes back. There's maybe a bite or two taken out of it. They're all like too drunk to eat a salad. And all of this food is coming back. And who's, carrying it on over downstairs where it's all going to get thrown out? A bunch of people of color, a bunch of visa workers that we worked with, a bunch of like these wonderful people that I've grown to love and that we built like a community and family within our kitchens, but they were struggling to pay rent. I was lucky.
Yep.
I did not have responsibilities like that were so deep yet, like rent was thankfully covered. So that was a big thing off my plate, and I don't have children and I don't have those things
Yeah.
to worry about in that sense. I could concentrate at that point in my life on like trying to build something for myself. And these people didn't have that. And again, you see people like, it was probably people like DeSantis sitting there shoving their faces and,
Absolutely.
being weird with waitresses or whatever it is. And meanwhile, the rest of us are doing all of this hard work to pull off this one night. And they get a night like that every single week. Um, and I mean,
And they
it's,
don't
isn't
even
it?
appreciate it. They
No. And
don't even
it's
appreciate it because they get it all the time.
exactly. And it's so much about that like retribution, that like I just want that wealth to be redistributed.
Yeah.
They get the access
Yeah.
to such good food. They get access to the best food. And
It gets
I mean, I've been
wasted.
lucky because I've worked in this industry. I've gotten to try all of these things and do all of these things, and I've gotten like this wealth of knowledge. I've also gone into debt for it, but
Yeah.
I wish there were a way. And like what I think a lot of food justice is obviously goes into racial justice and all of those things and equity for everybody, for all communities. um but I also think it has to start from the top. It has to start from these like
Mhm.
rich evil little overlord men. Putting money, it comes down to money, and it comes down to funding projects that get food out there, and healthy food if we can, because we've got food
Yes.
deserts in so many parts of the country, and we've got such a lack of access to like good quality nutrition for children. I
Yes.
mean, I remember school lunches are like a grilled cheese and I mean like it's not
Yeah.
good for you.
It's bad.
Yeah, you're
It's
not
bad.
learning to like vegetables, you're not learning to enjoy food. And that's not a thing in a lot of other countries. A lot of other countries have their school lunches. They're like five-star meals because that's what children deserve, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's
Y-
opinions. But here we're like, we're going to, put children in debt and make them go to school every day and remind them, hey, you owe us money to be able to eat your one meal a day. And that's an insane concept. Um, and I
Yeah.
think it goes back to, in Florida, see, you were talking about DeSantis and all that stuff, and like taking a chunk of his wealth and putting it somewhere. And Florida has really strict laws about well, we've got cottage laws. So like the whole idea of food sovereignty is kind of we take back, our ownership of food, our ownership of essentially the land, and distribute it the
Mhm.
way that we would like to, in a very ideal world. And the way that they've set up a lot of like the cottage laws in Florida, you can't produce and sell or like barter food legally in a lot of ways. The limitations are very, very small. It's like a small amount of baked goods and things like that. And other states have theirs a little more widened. And other states also allow for free fridges. Tampa Free Fridge, something I do want to shout out, was put
Yes.
through the ringer when they first
Yes.
started, because we have some really insane laws about like literally just helping people, or the lie that you can't donate food at a restaurant because it's against the law, because that person that got that donated food could sue you for getting sick. Completely not true. We're fully allowed,
Yeah,
as long as you,
I
yeah,
heard about that too. Yeah.
and when it comes down to it, as long as you're following essentially serve safe guidelines, food within a certain amount of hours, cooled down properly, all of those things, which it takes us two extra steps anyways. We could be donating food. We could be giving out that extra food. We go through so much food waste.
Yeah.
And I think that's what killed my like love for that. Was part of it. It was seeing how much food waste, how much stuff gets thrown out for for a party, for this and that, and it's like,
Yeah.
but we're also set up that way. That I think it comes down to like making sure that we're, and we can do our part and we can do those little things. Obviously, it's a much bigger issue that much more wealthy people need to tackle, but I think we can start small with like food swaps. And I mean, the same way we do a clothing swap, if you've got that box of pasta that you thought you were going to love and you didn't like it, go swap it with someone for something that they bought in bulk, because that's another issue that we have, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like one person. I only buy groceries for me, and there's always too much of them. I only ever need half a loaf of bread. What if we could create a system locally to go ahead and give someone else that half a loaf of bread, and then they could give me something, or we can just, donate a little freer. But because we've got all these laws in place and these kind of things that, a lot of red tape that stop you from having something like a free fridge, it makes it so much harder.
Yeah. I also specifically remember my friend who had been volunteering with Food Not Bombs, TAMPA.
Hmm.
They had gone to like some park where, they would bring a bunch of food and feed anyone who was at that park, many of them houseless. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so that sounds good. There's people donating either food or money in order to help create these meals for people who don't know when their next meal will be. And then you take them to a
Exactly.
public park, a public place where anyone should be able to meet and, have a picnic, I guess is what we can call it. Um, uh, but then they ended up getting shut down by the cops. The cops came and said that they were like soliciting, or not soliciting, I'm sorry, like loitering or something. But it's
Oh,
like they were
okay.
literally sharing food at a park. Can you just not call that a picnic? Is it because they're houseless? Is
It's
that really
exactly what it
why?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like criminalizing something that people can't help, and it just like it's very backwards. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
And it's because we criminalize poverty, and then,
Right. And
we
demonize it.
exactly. And then, we make it, that's why I think I love the idea of like free fridges. And I
Me
have hope that
too.
we can get more around like Tampa, because it's also an anonymous thing. You can just go to it. Nobody has to see you. You don't have to feel like ashamed that you need help and assistance, which I wish we didn't need to feel that way at all, but I understand it. And
Yeah.
I mean, going and getting like good, viable food from a source where, like, I don't know, a lot of the places in Tampa, as I've been doing like more research on it, a lot of them are very like faith-based, and that's just not it for a lot of people in like the LGBTQ plus community. Like, I don't want to be in a church for a food drive. I
No.
don't want to be around
Yeah.
religious folks. That makes me uncomfortable. I wouldn't ask someone who like presents, a certain way to go and put themselves in danger, um, in a religious setting, in a setting where you might
Yeah.
be like attacked or anything like that. And so I think we need less faith-based organizations and more food fridges, more pantries, more like, again, grassroots, locally grown, like run by Black and Indigenous people of color, not
Yes.
just, white Christians that have like a savior complex about them.
Yeah. They're only
Because
doing it because they want to get to heaven.
exactly. Like, I just hope that people can eat.
Yeah, it's like I'm just trying to do this because I understand that we all need food. Some
Yeah.
of us have a little bit more access than others. And I think a big part of, where that shame can come from is again just like like this kind of like the all of the politics, it kind of goes
Hmm.
into capitalism and pulling up your bootstraps. Don't be lazy, work and you'll get what you need, and also the kind of like uh, idea that if you cannot provide like for yourself and for your own, well, you didn't pull your bootstraps up hard enough,
Exactly, yeah.
and like you should like feel inferior or like you didn't do enough
Yeah, now you don't get to eat. Sorry,
and now
your
you don't get
basic
to
needs
eat.
are not met.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's
And it can be so frustrating. So I really do I also love the idea of free fridges, or like I love that those exist. I saw one in Orlando a few months ago when I was there too. I think this first one I'd ever like seen or heard about like was in St. Pete. And
mhm.
then Tampa got one. And then yeah, I saw one in Orlando. So it's cool to see that it's becoming more of a thing, even through whatever hurdles people have to go through.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it comes down to people with that really want to community build, that really want to reach out and have the time and resources as well to, put themselves out there, to call, to act, to, do something. Because we've got to obviously do something about food insecurity. I think it's like such a, we all want to fight, and we all want, like, I think a lot of us want, let's not sugarcoat it, a revolution in so many ways.
Yeah.
You can't do that when you've got no food in your stomach. You can't do that when you're overworked and underpaid and too tired to even donate, because that's part of what it is time. We can't
Yep.
rally, we can't come together because we don't have the time to. Because if you don't put the time into your job, your 9 to 5, you don't have a roof over your head. You don't have food to put in your kids' mouths. And yeah, I just want the vicious cycle to end. And I think we can start with really small things like food fridges, and coming up with easier ways to get people nutritious food.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And it's just a shame how much food goes to waste. It really is just a shame.
Hmm.
And it is often those audiences, like you mentioned, the fine dining, the people who kind of go to those types of establishments who can afford to, and then not eat any of the food that they just paid for. Uh, it's
Yeah, yeah,
it's it's like, okay, there's an excess that's being served to people who, yes, they can pay for it, but there's an excess. So why can't we get the food was paid for? Why can we not redistribute that
exactly.
food because it was already paid for?
No, exactly. It's 100%, like, it's such a simple
It's
concept at its core. And I've fought bosses, and I have tried my hardest to, or I'll take things home if they're like, "Oh, you can take it home."
yep,
And I'm like, "I'm going to take it home, and I'm going to go donate it because I'm not going to eat this, but I can
yep,
make sure someone else gets it, or I don't need it." But I mean, and we can start
mhm,
small. I know a lot of artists, and, like, we all work in the service industry to some
yeah.
capacity. If you have the little bit of leadway to take something from work and donate it, or even just take it for yourself and for your friends that you know are in need, like, do so.
Yeah, when I worked at a museum a couple years ago, this was probably a little more than a couple years ago because I believe it was like pre-COVID.
Hmm.
Um, there would be, it's a museum, so they would have like these private events with like catering and stuff, and sometimes I would have to work those. And there would, yeah, again, often be a surplus of food. And I remember one time, like not many people or people who like worked there kind of, they were able to grab some food for themselves to take home, but there's still so much left over. I just kind of like started filling a couple of boxes, and I'm like, I'm gonna go outside to the people who are outside every single day because they don't have any place to live, and I'm gonna give this food to them because otherwise
Exactly.
it's just gonna get thrown away. And I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I was kind of just packing boxes, like I was just packing boxes, and people probably just thought it was for myself, but uh, that was
No, and
one of the
it's
biggest aspects of that job that just one of the aspects of that job that just was like, I don't know if this is like the space that I want to be in
no,
for a
absolutely. And it,
career.
it is it is that simple. It is as simple as putting food in a to-go container and giving it to someone. And obviously, the higher ups don't see it that way for whatever reason. And again, we all have bought into the lie that, like, someone can sue you thing. But if
Right.
it comes down to paying a couple of legal fees to make sure that a bunch of people got fed, I kind of think that's worth it.
And
If you're
especially
that
when these people
rich.
are profiting like every day off
Exactly,
of other people's
exactly.
labor.
So you might as well,
You might as well. Yeah, that's my attitude about it as well. And it's also this also has me thinking too. When you mentioned laws, there are also, and I don't know to what extent and if this is unique to America or anything like that, but I know um, typically when people are like planning a city or like what we're gonna build, like is there gonna be a park, where's the park
Mhm.
gonna go, blah blah blah. Oftentimes in these like urban kind of planning things, they often will do or what's I don't know the right way of putting this, but it's like they're they're sexist towards plants. So it's like they only plant male plants so that they won't
Yes.
flower and fruit.
Yeah.
So that there won't be like fruit trees like or vegetables like everywhere for free. And it's like that's just dumb because imagine if we all had like apple trees and orange trees just
Oranges just
growing
kind of growing everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah, well, and that all goes back to like redlining and that whole thing and how we, sectioned off people of color and black folk into like these awful little areas where we gave them no resources. Um and it unfortunately all goes back to that concept. But yeah, it really is as simple as, and I know New York has been like on the forefront of gardens, like gardens everywhere, making
Mhm.
urban gardens. There's a whole initiative about it, and I wish I could remember the name of what it is. Just with school kids and making sure that at their schools they have these gardens so they can access things like why would that be a bad thing, to have like a cucumber garden or little things like that where you can just access free food. But they've set it up so you cannot do that. Same with
Right.
like the dumpster diving thing. As long as you have a no
Mhm.
trespassing sign up, it is then illegal to dumpster dive. But
Mhm.
I mean, again, TikTok, I've seen so many amazing videos of people finding, I mean, just bounties of food and unexpired things too that have
Me
just been
too.
deemed trash because that's what they say it is now.
Yeah. I've watched like so many YouTube videos about dumpster diving. Most of them I think were like in the UK.
Hmm.
Um I did see a few like in the US and they were actively like, this is illegal, but I'm gonna go do it. Hopefully I don't get caught. And it's like, man, like ridiculous. It's just absurd to me. It's just absurd. But I will say on the bright side, I believe in Brazil, since we were talking about like farming and food forests and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, the world's what will be the world's largest like community garden slash food forest is in Brazil. And they've already fed like thousands of people. And it's not even at its largest state yet.
Oh, that's awesome. See, I love that.
Yeah, and they also it's like community run as well. Like people will come and volunteer to take care of it and plant things, and it's just it was a pretty inspiring thing to read about. And it's one of those things where I read it and I'm like, why are we not doing that here when we definitely like there's no reason why we couldn't do that. And I just feel like there's so many ideas like this, like even in conversations that I've had with people like on this podcast already,
Yeah.
like there's always this I feel like we always end up talking about these things where uh people who are in power say like, oh, like that cannot be done or it's not possible. And it's like, we flew to the moon because we wanted to. Like, why is there no way that we could have a giant food forest like in every neighborhood in the United States if we wanted to? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. If we can go to the moon, if we can shoot these incredible like high-tech cameras out into space and take pictures of galaxies that are thousands of light years away,
then I think
why can't we feed everyone on planet Earth? Doesn't make any sense to me. But
it's also like agriculture is one of the most basic things that humans have perfected for years. There's not a single reason that we shouldn't have one in every neighborhood. And especially, I mean, it also, I think that's part of like reparations, giving back. That, I mean, you know, BIPOC people make it like, I think I forgot again what the percentage was, but like the smallest portion of farmers. But then when you think about everybody who and like landowners, but when you think about the people who are picking your food and packaging your food and doing all of the hard work and they're getting paid literal pennies for it, it's
yeah,
like, what if we were to give back to our communities? What if we were to give an acre, I mean, an acre or two of land to some underserved community and see what they do with it? I mean, no one would go unfed, you know?
yeah,
But there's got to be like an Amazon warehouse that's got to be put there or something. So,
right, right.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that I think at least is getting more attention, especially since COVID has exacerbated a lot of this.
Mhm.
Even the numbers when we had the panel at the gallery I mentioned earlier, it's like the amount of people seeking uh, food
Mhm.
has like doubled in the last 2 years, and it's like 40% of the population that at the school I work at is food insecure. Like they don't know where their next
Yeah.
meal is going to come from, um, and that is just again, it's just one of those frustrating things. It's just one of those frustrating things that well, that's why I like to shout out like Food Not Bombs a lot, and
Mhm.
I try to donate to them every so often because that's such important work that doesn't always get recognized.
No, no, especially like in again the platform of like who gets recognized for doing the community work and like for doing these things, it is always again like those Christian white organizations that are doing it for the wrong reasons. Um,
Yeah,
which I'll have to look them up. I This is the first time I'm hearing about them. Um,
colonialism,
yeah. Yeah, it all
like
goes back to that.
yeah, yeah.
And there's actually
So
this really cool, I mean, for people in Tampa, business owners, anybody, there's this amazing app that's like popping off all over in Europe and in major cities. I think New York has started doing it. Too Good to Go. If you have a business or some kind of like, you know, thing where you sell food, you can register your business to offer like discounted, incredibly discounted food at the end of the night, at the end of service. And you can set your own prices, and there's a way to use it through the app. Tampa is not on it at all. And I think if we got enough people onto it, it could push it forward because I think it'd be a really cool thing here. We have so many restaurants, we have so much of that like industry booming here, but that means there's so much waste at the end of the night. That means there's so
yeah.
much just good food getting thrown out into the trash. And I think if we can limit that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. I think I like found out about that app like maybe a year ago through TikTok again. Um
Always.
and yeah, always. And I went to go download it and there wasn't like really anything in available in Tampa. I don't think anything at all. But I think it is a really cool concept, where it's like you know, we have this big pot of like chili or whatever that like never
Yeah.
sold and we can't save it. Instead of selling it for like $6 for a cup of it, let's sell it for like 3 or whatever, and
And
then
then yeah, I mean it's discounted, it's a lot cheaper, it's more accessible for like good food too. I mean, I think everyone deserves
yeah,
to have a nice meal out every now and again, and if we can give that to people through something like that, I think it's a nice resource, you know.
yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Well, that was all really great. Thank you for all of that great info and sharing all of that with us. I wanted to do kind of a fun little game where I
Okay.
list 3 very famous uh, chefs who are men and who are white, and I want to hear your hot takes. Um, because I think that when we talk about cooking and the context of like a chef, I think
Hmm.
that these are kind of the 3 names that kind of come to mind.
Okay, cool.
So I think it would be kind of fun to see what you think about these people.
Oh, I love this. Okay, cool. I'm excited.
Okay. Okay, so number 1, Gordon Ramsay. Hot take.
Okay. Did a lot of cool things for the food world. But like very specific level of the food world. There's this terrible video of him being what most male chefs are, and that's a predator towards Sofia Vergara, and I've never been able to look at him the same ever.
Oh
He
my
like actually makes my
gosh.
skin crawl. Like he just looks like he'd hit on like a barely legal server, and that's disgusting. So next.
Yeah, good call. Guy Fieri.
Guy Fieri actually seems like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
I also think like, because he's classically trained French chef, done the whole thing, worked in Europe as like
Wow,
a
I
young
did
person.
not know that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
The
would
man
have
is like,
never guessed.
the man is super accomplished, but he goes to like these down home, like, you know, hometown small businesses. It's very grassroots of him. Like he's a cool
Mhm.
guy, and he also has like during the pandemic, he made sure that a lot of those places were you know making money by having like
Stayed
at home
alive.
specials with them. Yeah, so big props to Guy Fieri. We love him.
Based Guy Fieri. Off
Seriously.
to Flavor Town. I think I mean, I definitely learned some things about him in the last couple years where I was like, wow, like you seem like a pretty cool person. Like you're all right, you
Yeah,
know? You're
the
not
whole like
like,
officiates gay weddings. Like,
yeah,
you
like
know.
cute, cute. Gay rights, love that. Okay, and then last, but probably not least, Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, that man. I actually was like, I've been on a binge of old Anthony Bourdain content. The man brings
Mm-hmm.
tears to my eyes. I think he's genuinely like just he used his power for good. Um, and I don't know, he was one of the only people, as loud as he was, and as like so many white male chefs now admire him so heavily, but I don't think any of them have ever listened to a damn thing he's ever said. Um, he's been so loud about like mistreatment in kitchens, and he was so loud about like sexism and like the racism and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. And he would go to countries, and he was so respectful towards everything that happened. And like, I stand. Rest in
Yeah.
peace to
Yes.
a really wonderful man. Yeah, I loved Anthony Bourdain for sure.
Yeah, I really did not know anything about him before I started dating my partner, and he loves Anthony Bourdain and would watch his show.
Anthony Bourdain is definitely a good one. And then if I'm gonna shout out a couple of chefs of color, a couple of amazing
Yes.
people. If you want fantastic food content, Sola El Wali. She blew the top off of the whole Bon Appetit scandal with
Yeah.
mistreatment of the chefs of color there, and
Yep.
I just think she's amazing. I love everything she does. Her and her husband are both amazing. Um, and then so there's also Chef Kwame. I cannot pronounce his last name. I am not going to butcher it. I will just learn how to say it later. And uh, just won a James Beard Award. Started a like chef safe nail polish brand, so then we can wear nail polish
Oh,
for self expression at work. And I thought that was really fun.
that
Um,
is.
Yeah, super, super cool people. And yeah, I think that's it. Those are just two people that I'm obsessed with right now, and I think everyone should be paying attention to.
Yeah, I'll have their names in the description too, and any links that we can find for social media or websites, so
Yeah.
that people can check them out. Um, well, great. Thank you so much. And then I guess one of my last questions, which, ties into the shout outs you just gave, but what are some of your biggest influences in this space?
Ooh, in this space, God, definitely. And there's like specific women that I've worked with, but I think any woman I've worked with in the past like 6 years has changed my life monumentally. I've worked with so many. Let me shout out actually Wanda. She's not gonna ever listen to this, but Wanda was like probably the first like woman of color I saw take charge in like a setting full of white men, full of white
Mm-hmm.
people. She just garnered respect in a way that like I don't know. I think it just I would see her and just like let her go off, and I was like, damn, I want to grow up to be her, and
Oh,
yeah, I will forever admire her. Um, and then just, the like I think every chef has like a grandma story or like a mom story. And I just think specifically my dad's mom, the way that she like commands a kitchen and just without fail, without recipe, without anything, just cooking through like love and soul and feeling. And it comes out great every time. And I think I will always and forever admire that.
oh, I love that so much. I'm so glad you have been surrounded by like so many like strong like women who can help kind of like guide you and shape you into the chef you are today.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I would hope to eventually, create a space where we're all doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're on your way.
Yes, yes. It's all a part of the journey.
Yes. Well, again, this was such a great conversation. So,
Yes, I loved this. Thank you so
yeah.
much for reaching out.
Yeah, and again, just thanks for taking the time. I know every little moment can be precious, so I really appreciate you spending some time with me today and with our audience. And I wanted to go ahead and give a little shout out to a local organization. This is actually someone who does deal with food insecurity and food sovereignty often, and will often center people with disabilities as well. But
Okay, love
the name
that.
of the organization is Abolition in Action. They have a community garden. They do reparations free stores all the time. They're constantly doing community events and activist events. I think one of their next events is going to be on August 6th. Where they're going to meet in order to learn how to uh, call like your local representatives
Hmm.
and like how to speak and like how you can get your voice heard, and if we all do it, the power that can be uh, demonstrated with so many voices. And I think that's really important too, just because I think, me included, a lot of people have anxiety with phone calls and that kind of a thing, especially if it's
Yeah.
someone towards to someone who might be in power. It can be very anxiety inducing, but they are going to hold an event where they say like we're going to make some tea, bring your favorite blanket or stuffed animal, and we're going to learn how to do this thing.
Oh,
So
I
I think
love
that's a
that.
really great way to uh, create community action and inspire that. So they're doing a bunch of great work, great nonprofit. Definitely go check them out. And their website is abolitioninaction.org.
Oh,
And
that's
then is
wonderful.
there
I
anyone
really
that
love
you
that.
wanted to shout out?
I'll be honest, I'm like fairly new to Tampa, so I don't know a ton of organizations locally.
That's okay. It
Um,
doesn't need to be local.
okay, cool. Well, I will shout out. I've been obsessed with the Ochre Project for a couple of years now. I mean, it's Black trans people cooking for Black trans people, making sure that they have food and safety, and I mean, they do a bunch of actions against violence for the trans community, and it's really really wonderful work. And actually, a local organization further down south in Florida, um, ARC, I can't remember. I think it's like across Broward. They teach disabled people how to cook in an accessible way, and that's really really awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, that is really great. Thank you for sharing. I think I've heard of Okra Project before. But what were we gonna say?
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no,
No, I was just
I
agreeing.
was
You're
just
good.
gonna say I'll link everything below so anyone can go check them out. If you got a couple dollars to spare to donate, I'm gonna go ahead and send a little bit of money over to Abolition in Action. Uh,
I'll do the
but
same. I'll definitely be making a donation.
Well, thanks again so much for enlightening us and having this conversation. I had a really great time. I learned a lot.
Me
Um,
too. Thank you so much. Yeah.
yeah, and I really just again, I just appreciate it and all the hard work you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I
Of
hope to speak to you
course.
soon.
Yeah, sounds good. You have a good evening, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you would like to follow Alana on her culinary journey, feel free to give her a follow on Instagram. Her username is _Rosemary Kitchen. Thanks again, Alana, for being a fantastic guest. This episode of Archived Conversations was brought to you by my lovely patrons over on Patreon and you, the listener/viewer. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. If you would like to get these episodes a week early, please check out Patreon. The link will be in the description below, or you can visit patreon.com/MiaMakes. For just $1 a month, you can get access to these podcast episodes a week early, including video, or you can get more depending on which tier you subscribe to. So please check it out, and I hope to see you next week. Until then, have a great one.